Listeners, when we talk about building something from the ground up, it's easy to romanticize the success story, the big exit, the freedom, the yacht, the living the dream. But behind every eight-figure story, there's the untold part, the long nights, the hard calls, the identity shifts that come with letting go of control. Welcome back, listeners, to this episode of the BizBlend podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today we are going to unpack the real human side of scaling and selling a business. Now, let me introduce my guest to all of you. She was born into entrepreneurship, it's literally in her DNA. From opening her first small business in Anchorage, Alaska, to co-founding a scheduled charter air service that carried 35,000 passengers a year, and later selling it to Alaska Airlines. She has lived the dream and the discipline as well. But what fascinates me, listeners, the most in her journey isn't just scale, it's what came after. The reinvention, the ability to step back, build systems that could run without her, and still live life on her own terms, from Alaska to Maui and beyond. So, today we are going to dive into how you build, you let go, and still you can stay aligned with your purpose when your business becomes bigger than you have ever imagined. So, listeners, meet my lovely guest, Ral West. So, Ral, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you, Sana. That was a lovely introduction. I was fascinated.
No, it's really, really such an inspiring journey, Ral, and this actually really reflects, this bigger. I think it's a gap, and it's kind of becomes a concern for many of the founders or business owners or entrepreneurs who think that their brand is kind of their identity, their own identity and brand. They are connected. The brand or the company is nothing without them. They are nothing without the company. So I think we are going to solve, or at least we are going to show the way. You are going to show the way on how to plan maybe in advance as well. Because I think exit, selling your business, or kind of letting go of that control is something that starts inside out. So with that, you built your business from the ground up into an 8-digit operation, Ral. So if you can take us back to the very first phase, like what did starting from nothing actually look like for you?
Okay. Well, thank you. It was actually my husband and myself, and
Okay.
it was his brainchild. I had my own business, a different business, and we were working across the hall from each other in Anchorage in tiny little offices. And I was representing companies in Hawaii, and I had to fly to Hawaii to learn about the products that I was representing to Alaskans. And he wanted to figure out a way to go to Hawaii for free on a business trip too. So he took his real estate background and kind of merged it with my travel industry background and came our way to start representing Alaskans who own condos in Hawaii. And then with my travel industry advice, he packaged the condos with rental cars and inter-island air and made a whole all vacation package. And then we added eventually the air from Alaska to Hawaii across the Pacific Ocean. And it was at that point we were buying seats from scheduled carriers.
Okay.
Then the scheduled carriers stopped serving our market and no way to get our clients to Hawaii to enjoy vacations. So we were faced with the possibility of just the business shutting down. We didn't have much income at all after that.
Okay. Okay.
But we found an airplane that we could charter and had to charter the whole plane and pay
Mm-hmm.
for every seat on that plane, whether we sold them or not. And that was the real beginning of a huge transition for the company from just the little mom and pop, just, operating from a shoestring. I mean, it didn't cost anything to start this business. He, just said, hey, this is what we're going to do, and did it. And now all of a sudden there was a significant financial risk in doing this charter. But he studied our data that showed us how much business we had done in these summer months in prior seasons,
Mm-hmm.
and calculated that we could do it again. And so we felt that we could indeed meet the demands of that charter. And we did. We sold every seat. But the company then just grew phenomenally almost overnight. And
Okay.
that was a big, big challenge for us to keep up because we were the mom and pop. By that time,
Yeah.
I it kind of put my business on hold and was devoting all my time to this business that my husband had originally created, but I was advising him along the way. And now we were in it shoulder to shoulder, trying to keep this business going. And, we had to have more employees. We had much greater volume of business,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have the systems yet that made it smooth and easy. So we had to figure out how to do that. And we studied books. We turned to our mentors. I went back to college. I did
Wow.
all I could just to try to figure out how could we mold this business into something that could run without us having to be there all the time, because we were pretty much married to the business. Even our daughter had come to the office after school because, we couldn't get free of the business to go home. We were eating here at the office, and that meant like fast food, McDonald's and pizza. And, it was terrible. But that's kind of what it demanded until we were able to figure out how to teach our team how to do what we did and how to help them learn how to make decisions so that we didn't have to be there all the time. And, it took 5 years to learn everything that it took to create all the systems, to build the team, to mold the company culture so that we walk away and know that the company would run smoothly even if we weren't right there.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that's a whole lot. That's a whole lot, Ral. I mean, first of all, I must really thank you for summarizing that in such a short period of time because really it has been such a long journey. And I think sometimes, when um you really look back, it feels like it all like went like, so fast. But uh, I think the two main takeaways which I can take is number one, and this is something that is not just specific to entrepreneurship or business. I think constant learning. Sometimes, we are sometimes very egoistic that, we do not need any kind of learning or going back to school or, going back to learning something new um, is kind of would kind of look like a bit humiliating, because we're already grown up and we have already seen so much of the world. But I think that is something, it's such a big life lesson that, there is no specific stage of life that at which, you have to stop learning. It's a constant process. So you mentioned that you had to go back and, learn that how to build systems, how to get this done. It took 5 years, for every one of you to understand. Maybe sometimes a bit of sacrifice in there as well. Um, and that's where my next question is, Ral. What is the biggest lesson that you have learned, that is, kind of single-handedly can be credited for successfully scaling a business and making it exit ready? Is it the systems? Is it the leadership, the founder, the owner, or or is it how successful in terms of numbers it is?
Oh, I think it's all of the above. Ev- Everything's important. But I think, this is kind of going back to what you were saying to begin with, is you have to have the right mindset, and you have to be willing to accept that you don't know everything. And you have to be willing to be okay with the mistakes that you're going to make. Mistakes are part of it. And so if you beat yourself up too much for the mistakes and just get stuck or get paralyzed because you're afraid of making mistakes, you won't go very far. So we had to learn to turn these mistakes into lessons, things that we would make corrections because of the mistakes. One of our mentors was Robert Kiyosaki, and he taught us.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things he taught us was that every mistake is just a learning opportunity. So you got to dig into it and figure out what happened. He also taught us that 80% of the time when something goes wrong, it's the system that failed, not the person. So just continually look at what are the systems doing? Is there a hole in the system somewhere that caused a certain mistake or, chaos to happen? And then get in there and fix it. Fix the system. Don't replace the person. So that's a huge one. And just keep yourself focused on learning as much as you possibly can. I'm a dedicated lifelong learner. I don't care how old I am or how much I think I've learned. There's always more, so much more to learn. And that's what makes life very exciting, don't you think? Is that there's always something else around the corner?
It does. It does. Yeah. I mean, trust me, there is so much to learn. And sometimes I also get anxious, like, how can I do that? How can I learn that? How can I, whom should I learn it from? Who is, actually a good mentor or someone credible enough to guide me? Because I think right now we are at that cusp of, um, where everybody, like, digitally or, physically, they're like trying to be the subject matter experts. But I think it's kind of an information dump on us. But I think we need that awareness and that right mindset to identify what exactly do we need to prioritize right now. And for that, I think the systems need to be in their place. So it's all like connected, like a web.
Yeah, it's very much connected. And systems are very, very important, but it's just part of it.
Yeah.
When I went up setting out to teach other entrepreneurs how to do what we did, how to take themselves out of the day-to-day, I recognized that there were really 6 principles that were the key to our success. And systems is one of them. That's principle number 1. But it's also learning how to track your data and setting up your culture, making sure that your culture is aligned with your own values and that you can teach it to people and have your team buying into your culture. That's incredibly important. And making sure that your team has the tools and the training and the guidelines to do their job, and getting the team aligned with the same goals that you have. That's huge. And then, making sure that your customers are not just happy, but delighted. How do you delight your customers? Those are all very, very important ingredients to building a successful company. And you can't have one without the other. So, I call it like a 6-legged stool. You have to have all 6 legs. They all have to be equal, or else something's going to be wobbly, and you don't want that. So
I so much agree with you there. So much agree. And you mentioned about culture, and that is exactly where my next question comes in. Um, like, how did you actually make, these values stick once you weren't in the room every day? Because after all, at one end, um, we are humans, we are flawed. No one is perfect. On the other hand, if we try to, as a founder, as an owner, try to assess, I think sometimes it's a very tricky balance to maintain. It can be identified as micromanaging or too much of, forcing upon. So, were there any specific approaches or activities or any kind of framework that you followed?
yes. Um, Actually, it was as an acronym that my husband came up with.
Okay.
It was WERQ, or we called it our work ethic.
Ah.
The W stood for win-win, and we wanted to make sure that our team understood that our philosophy was that if we win, you win. And we also wanted our customers to win and our vendors to win and our community to win. And of course, obviously our team. And we practiced what we preached. So when we had a good year, the team would get bonuses. I mean, monetary bonuses. They got to put money in their pockets that they could use for, gosh, in some cases, a down payment on a house. And at the very least, they could, just have something fun to do with that. The E was efficiency. And we wanted to make sure that that's where the systems come in, use the systems to make everything as efficient as possible and use automation where you can. People, like you said, people are flawed, but usually automation works pretty well. So if you can automate something, do it. So, at one point we invested several $100,000 in an online reservation system so that all of our bookings didn't have to come in by phone to one of our reservations agents. And that changed our business totally. The R was responsibility. So we had to take responsibility. If we made a mistake, we would own it, apologize, and make it right. And we expected everybody in the company to do that. We expected our vendors to be responsible. They needed to deliver what we were paying them to provide to our customers, like hotels and other airlines and so forth. And then the Q is quality. We wanted to make sure that we were always delivering a quality product to our customers, which would make them want to come back and buy from us again and again and again. So this WERQ was something that we taught very purposefully to everybody in our company. And then we said, if you're faced with making a decision, if your decision is guided by these WERQ principles, we will stand by your decision. You can show us that it was a win-win, you were being efficient, you were taking responsibility and delivering quality. That's a good decision. And, maybe it wasn't the decision that we would have made ourselves, but if it fulfilled our guidelines and, used our principles, we would support it. And that empowered our team. I think that's how you have to put your words into action in order to infiltrate your culture throughout the organization and make people really feel it. You can't just stand there and say it. You have to actually do it. So that's what it takes.
It does. It does. Listeners, trust me, it does, because practice what you preach. I think that is something, I have also personally observed in workplaces. It's so kind of missing because people who are working, for you, quote unquote, they're working on the front line. They are engaging with the customers. They're engaging with prospective customers. When something goes wrong, it's very easy to pin the blame in there. But, especially the responsibility and accountability that you mentioned in the WERQ framework, Ral, I think that is something, it's so crucial. Of course, all of the four are crucial, because, if I as a leader or I as a founder, I'm open in, saying that, yes, it has been a mistake. Let's try to work out the solution. Let's try to first identify where it went wrong, and let's try to work out something. I think that same will be measured by our team members as well, because they know that, there is some sense of accountability here. So it cannot be like, taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yes. And you have to stay true to what you say you believe in. It will know. It will be apparent. So, yeah. I really believe that the culture of our organization was a huge, huge contributor to our success.
That is the proof in there, listeners. That is the proof. And Rel also, we have talked about the during. Let's also try to get a glimpse of life after the sale. Like many people would assume that once you have sold a business, it's the finish line, but often it's a new chapter. So
Well,
what?
go ahead.
So I just wanted to ask Ral that what was the biggest identity shift or lesson you had to navigate post the sale? Yeah, go on.
Well, I think the biggest navigation occurred for my husband. I think there was a huge identity issue, because he founded the company and his identity was very much wrapped up in it. And I had other things going on. Like when we sold the business, I was involved in a couple of different nonprofit organizations and on boards and so forth. So I could turn my energies elsewhere. We also had some other businesses. We owned a motel and an RV park, and we had real estate endeavors, and I was busy managing them. So I found I could transition pretty nicely. It was harder for him. So there's definitely a mental shift that has to happen. But long before we sold the business, we actually were practicing the live in the dream because we had a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer that ran the company for us for several years before we sold. So we were all out of it day-to-day basis wise. We just, we kept an eye on it, and we had all of our reports, all of our data tracking to keep us informed as to what was going on. But instead of just sitting back and saying, okay, we're at the finish line, like you said, we took the profits from that sale and started buying cruise ships, small cruise ships.
Oh, okay.
We got into that business and we're in it for about 10 or 12 years. Bought the cruise ships, fixed them up, and leased them to a cruise line who operated them for us in Alaska and Mexico and on the Columbia River. And that was very exciting. But one by one, we were selling the ships to that cruise line because they wanted to own them and not just be renting them from us. And then when COVID came in 2020, we had one ship left. And of course, it was tied up to the dock as of March of 2020, couldn't operate. So we eventually sold that to the cruise line and got out of the cruise ship business in 2022. But we still didn't stop. The next pivot for us was into multifamily real estate, learning how to participate in syndications of multifamily properties across the U.S., the southern states mostly. And we're still doing that. So, we're not about to just sit back and retire. I don't think it's in my DNA.
I don't think so. It is real. Yeah, it is not there.
But every business, we use the same principles. We set up systems. We have data tracking. We set them up so that we're still free to travel. We travel probably at least 3 months out of the year. A month here, 6 weeks there. It's a wonderful life.
Wow, that's God bless. That is so good to know. That is so good to know, and that really, really gives a lot of hope for the founders or the business owners who are listening. Because I think success can be loud, but then the meaning is very quiet. And it's really powerful, Ral, to see that how you, your husband, you both are redefining, through investing and then also teaching others. So once again, if we can tie everything back to learning, and there is no, time to stop learning. So I think it's such a beautiful kind of, close loop that we have created through this conversation. So Ral, before we wrap up, if listeners, they would like to connect with you and get access to all the resources, the wisdom that you're sharing, the work that you're doing, what would be the best way?
Yes, well, thank you for asking. My website is ralwest.com, And if you would like to reach out to me and talk about your business and what you're trying to create, just go to ralwest.com/let's talk. And that will reach out to me and we can begin a conversation. And I've got a mastermind group that's just starting up. It's called BOSS, Business Owner Success Strategies. And I'll be announcing the details of that very soon. You can see me on LinkedIn, also Ral West. I have a newsletter you can subscribe to. I have a YouTube channel. Subscribe to that, and lots of ways that you can learn from me and connect with me. And I would appreciate it.
Superb, superb. So, listeners, I'll have all the links in the show notes. So go do check out Ral's website and also subscribe to her newsletter, Ral's Success Principles, and also check out her YouTube channel. I'll just have all the links in the show notes for every one of you to refer to. And if I think one thing that I absolutely loved from today, like in today's conversation, listeners, I think that it challenged this fairy tale version of entrepreneurship. It is not about the commas in your revenue or the, glamorous lifestyle. It's about building something that doesn't consume you. So thank you so, so much, Ral. I'm really, really thankful to you because you really, really helped us realize that real success isn't stepping away. It is stepping into a new rhythm of leadership, where there's trust, systems, responsibility, and values. They are taking the front seat.
That's nicely said.
Thank you. So, listeners, if you are listening and you are thinking, like, how do I make my business work for me, not the other way around, this episode is your sign. So, revisit your values, revisit your systems, and maybe learn how to let go a little. Start with baby steps and also take help of RAS resources. So, do subscribe to this podcast. Do share this episode with your fellow founder friends or entrepreneur friends. Until then, this is BizBlend, where stories meet strategy. I'm your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.